Welcome to Drama-Free Healthy Living with Jess Cording. I'm your host, Jess Cording. I'm a registered dietitian, health coach, and author, and I'm here to help you streamline your wellness routine and establish a sane, more balanced relationship with food and fitness so you can reach your goals without losing your mind. On this podcast, we'll talk about nutrition, exercise, self-care, mindset, and more. I'll be bringing you interviews and expert insight on the topics that matter to your health and wellness. Hi, and welcome back to the Drama-Free Healthy Living podcast. I'm your host, Jess Cording. And today I have a guest that I'm super excited to introduce you guys to. I'm talking with Julia Borelli, who is the founder of Allay. Allay is a non-alcoholic wine company. I've talked a little bit on here about my own experience with drinking less alcohol over the years when I noticed the effect it was having on my mental health and physical health. It's something that I talk about a lot with my clients about finding enjoyable alternatives for, most of the time. So Julia, we were connected by mutual contact, like probably a year or so ago. And I've just really loved getting to learn more about the process behind creating non-alcoholic wines, in this case, de-alcoholized wine. Julia is a health and wellness enthusiast with a love for wine who takes a holistic approach to business by advocating for destigmatizing non-alcoholic choices and empowering individuals to make healthier decisions without having to compromise. So we talk a lot about just the way that these products are created, what she wishes everybody knew about non-alcoholic beverages and non-alcoholic wine specifically. And we also get into her experience of what it was like starting a company and what she's learned along the way. So I hope you guys love this episode. And I'd love to hear what you think. So please feel free to take a screenshot of yourself listening to this, tag me at Jess Cording. You can also tag Allay at Drink Allay Wines. And I can't wait to hear what you think. Let's get into it. Julia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I know I've been wanting to sit down and chat with you for so long. I remember finding out about Allay, and I was just, as someone who spent so much time working in the oncology space where we talk about decreasing alcohol intake, it's just been so cool to explore all the different non-alcoholic beverages out there on the market. And it's just a really interesting field. So I would love to know what got you interested in creating an NA wine.
Yeah. It's definitely a really exciting and just growing industry. So I'm really excited to be part of it. But what got me started is I myself took a personal just break from alcohol. I did dry January, which I think most people by now are probably familiar with. And, during that time, started exploring what options were out there for non-alc beverages, not just wine, just everything that was out there at that time. And I was really, really pleasantly surprised with the offerings and the taste. I was honestly shocked because it was brand new to me. I think like a lot of people, I assumed that they would taste like crap, because they're not the real deal. But the area that I felt like was lacking or just like falling a little short was the NA wine space. So that's kind of where the desire to create my own came from, is because that area I was like, okay, there seems like there's maybe a gap here. And then also wine has always been my drink of choice. I love wine. I just think wine is, not only does it taste good to me, but I just think it has such a nice community, bringing people together component to it as well, like having it with your dinner and, during the holidays and things like that. So that was why I went with the wine category.
I love that. And I think I'm glad that you highlighted the social connector piece, because I think sometimes I find it's fascinating that people get into a habit of drinking alcohol as a way to relax when we know that actually
right.
From a brain chemistry standpoint, it ends up having the opposite effect.
Right.
But that social connector, that is a definite thing. But so many people have ideas like, oh, I want to do this. I want to create a company that does this. I want to make this thing. But you actually did it. For you, what were some of the first steps of this idea to actually creating a product?
Yeah. So just for context, I don't really have a entrepreneurial background. In my, I guess, adulthood, I've tried to create little I would call them more passion projects than companies in my past, but it's not like I, am an expert at this by any means. So I really didn't know where to start. And I think like anyone maybe would, I just started Googling away like crazy, you name it. How do you start a company? Like, how do you remove alcohol from a beverage? I just was Googling and researching everything and as much as I could, and just taking tons and tons of notes, spending hours and hours a day, just kind of filling my brain with as much information as I could so that I felt like, okay, this could be viable. I at least have some sense of a direction to go here. So from there, it really just, a lot of it was like one foot in front of the other. One door opened another door, just started reaching out to people, getting contacts. They would introduce me to, people within their network and their industries. And I think like the main kind of part that opened the door for me was speaking with a product development company. And it was specifically for beverages, because they kind of gave me a lot of the direction and just what I needed to do to actually create my own product. That's not to say that you have to go that route, but for me, just because I was starting from, ground zero, that felt like the best route for me to go. And they kind of held my hand a bit through the initial stages. But yeah, it was and it still is an extreme learning journey, but it's been so fun and so exciting.
That's so cool. I love that. And it's cool to hear that there's different ways of approaching this too.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, how wine is de-alcoholized, like how you take alcohol out of a wine. Like, can you tell our listeners a little bit how Allay is made and what that process is like?
Yeah. And I'll say that they're not all treated equally. So there are a few different methods for how you can remove alcohol from a product. The one that we use is called spinning cone column, which is this giant machine. That's honestly like way above my knowledge level of like how it truly works. But essentially what it does is it like filters the wine through, and it has a vacuum, like a giant vacuum in it. And it separates the alcohol molecules out from the other molecules. And it goes, through like series of rounds of that. So other than that, so what I like to, or how I like to explain our product is, it's as close to conventional wine as you could get without there being alcohol in it. So we get our wine from a local vineyard in Washington State. So the grapes are harvested just as they would any wine, any standard conventional wine. And so we buy it in bulk with the alcohol in it, just, very, very typically. And then it goes to this facility where they remove the alcohol. And then after that, we ship it off to our co-packer, and that's where the actual formulating happens and the other ingredients are added. Our product, I think, is a little different in that it was really important for me not to include any preservatives or added chemicals to our formula. So we go through a pasteurization step actually at the end, which is I think pretty different from most other NA options out there, because a lot of them do contain some preservatives. But once that happens, basically we throw the label on and they're ready to go. So it's a complex process for sure. There's a lot of different pieces of the supply chain, but yeah, and just figuring that out alone was probably the most difficult part of everything.
It's so fascinating. And if you don't know this, like totally cool. It's just my curiosity because I just, my nerd brain. Like I know that sometimes we'll hear about like different polyphenols in alcohol, but knowing that pasteurization involves heating, like does that denature or just some of those polyphenols or make them less active?
Yeah. So don't quote me. But I'm like 95% sure that it does impact the polyphenols. I mean, as you said, heat is very intense and it affects any product. Wine, as I've learned, is super sensitive to any sort of, whether it's light, whether it's, oxidation, like any heat, especially any compound or form of air or whatever, it definitely impacts the wine. And that was a big part of why we add other ingredients to ours. And a lot of non-alc beverages do, is because once you remove the alcohol, the flavor, the aroma, the body, everything is pretty significantly impacted. But no, that's a really good question.
Yeah. And it's been on my mind because I do a lot of like researching on olive oil, and that's another substance that is so sensitive to heat, like the polyphenols in olive oil. And, let's talk about the other stuff that you add, because you guys add some kind of neat stuff that, I mean, maybe it's, different benefits from the polyphenols in wine, but yeah, tell us about some of the other stuff that you guys add.
Yeah. So I think the two ingredients that probably set us apart the most are the adaptogenic herbs we add. So we have ashwagandha and Rishi in our wine. And the reason for adding those was that really wasn't like a flavor or aroma or body component. That was strictly because when I created the product, I really wanted there to be added benefits to it versus just drinking something, right? Like, but I think everybody at this point has heard of functional foods and functional beverages. And the whole goal of those is that there is some sort of health benefit you're receiving from consuming it. So that was one of my goals from day one. And, after doing research, I landed on these two just because of some of their characteristics and properties that I felt like, whether it's the stress relief or just like feeling kind of like mimicking that sense of calm you feel maybe from a conventional glass of wine. It's obviously very different, but like that's as close as I could kind of get to mimicking that from a personal standpoint. It was like, okay, ashwagandha and Rishi, they both have these really powerful properties. And, just from my experimentation, I also was just like, wow, I'm really impressed with like how relaxed I feel after having a glass or what have you. So those are the two ingredients that I think really set us apart. And I'll also say everything is 100% certified organic in our formula. So, we wanted to be sure of where we were sourcing these ingredients from and making sure that they were in their most pure form as possible. But so we have some juice concentrates. So you'll see that in a lot of NA wines. That's a big flavor component, as I was saying, because you do lose that when you remove the alcohol. So we have that, and we have in our Cabernet, we have date syrup actually, which is also fairly unique. But that serves as a sweetener, but also gives it that more full-bodied feel that you get from, conventional red wine. And then in our Sauvignon Blanc, we have honey. So yeah, so there's a handful of other ingredients that are mostly like a flavor component, but those are our main ones.
Yeah, I will say the mouthfeel, it's such a weird word, but the mouthfeel of the bread, especially like that little bit of date syrup, it's really cool how it actually does feel like you're drinking a glass of wine. Like I haven't been able to tolerate wine since like age 30. So it's been a while, but I remember the feeling of wine. Like I'm putting my Nerf cap on, but like, when we look at conventional wine, like, in the initial moments when you're drinking, like you get that flood of like, the endorphins and, your dopamine receptors light up a little bit and that dulling sense that helps you feel relaxed. But then there's that rebound effect that a few hours later after your body's metabolized that wine, and then you end up just feeling stressed, anxious, freaked out in the middle of the night kind of feel. And it's interesting. Like I thought that it was really cool that you guys chose to use the adaptogenic herbs, because we do have research showing that these actually do help you feel calmer. So I thought that was really unique.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's, you kind of hit the nail on the head of like with, actual conventional wine, it is a very short-lived feeling of, stress, anxiety, relief and calm, and you're not truly benefiting from it. It's almost like a double-edged sword where, like you said, like later in the night, next morning, you're feeling horrible and your heart, during the night you're laying there and your heart's racing. And yeah, so that was the goal, is like, how can we kind of give people that sort of feeling that is beneficial and you're not having the negative side effects the next day.
As you were starting to develop this company and get out there and promote it and talk about it, just during that entrepreneurial journey that you found yourself on, is there anything that you wish you had known when you were starting?
Definitely a lot. But what comes to mind is, I think with the whole process, I wish I knew wine from a more like beyond just a consumer level, So as I mentioned earlier, I've always loved wine and have purchased my fair share over my adult life, but I never really went past that in terms of like taking classes or really studying the different types and even like the chemical interactions like we touched on a little bit. So I think, and I still have considered like taking courses just to really, level up a little bit and know like more about all the different types of wines and varietals and sourcing and you name it. So I think going in, I wish that I had a little bit more base knowledge just of wine and all of the factors that affect it. And yeah, so I think that comes to mind for sure. It's just wine knowledge in general. I think the other one I'll note would be the financial component. As you can assume, starting any company, there's a pretty big financial component, but I kind of naively didn't realize how big, which I think you could look at it in a beneficial way of like, if I knew, maybe I wouldn't have taken the leap, but it's one of those things where it's like, as you're going, it's almost like you're in too deep and you can't stop now because you're already so invested. But I think just, knowing what I was really getting myself into from the get-go probably would have been good. But like I said, it might have been the reason that I got this far. So yeah.
Be said for that. Like I know for in my own life when I've taken risks especially related to my business, there, that I think sometimes if I had known like how hard it was going to be, I might not have done it. But then I've always been like really proud that I did take that risk after the fact, when you have some perspective and you're like, right, oh, I survived that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now what about, because I know something I have come across like when talking with clients and at events where I've been serving non-alcoholic beverages, like, and I don't mean like if I'm like having people over for dinner. I mean, like if I'm at like a public event where that's part of the theme, like, for example, you and I were most recently talking about a breast cancer specific event where we were serving NA products. And it's always so fascinating to me when people are like, they won't even try it because they're like, well, it's not the real thing. Like I just find that so interesting, but I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah.
What is something that you wish everybody knew about non-alcoholic wines and non-alcoholic beverages in general?
Yeah, no, it's really funny. Like you just said, once now that I'm in it and I've been able to gain so much perspective and obviously get customer feedback and just really start to understand like who is my ideal customer. It is funny how there is so two sides, like completely two sides. There's the community that is either sober curious, they have, medical conditions and can't drink alcohol, or they just, choose not to have alcohol in their life, or maybe they're just a mindful drinker. And then there's the side that they do drink, conventional alcohol regularly. And we definitely lean more heavily on the side of people who either don't drink or drink less, because I think that they're more open to trying those NA products, kind of like you touched on. Whereas the other group of people, I don't know. I think it's still early, that like I started out with, like this category is still so new when you compare it to, regular alcohol. So I think that it will come with time where people want to try, want to be more open to trying things like that. But quick tangent, but this is how I always compare it, or when I'm talking to somebody about the NA space, is I kind of almost in my head think of it like gluten-free in that category, where when it first, when products started coming out that were gluten-free, granted they've been out for a while, but when brands really started to get into that, things didn't taste very good for the most part, right? And then they improved their formulas and things got better. And now, I mean, from my perspective, like a lot of gluten-free products taste really good, even though, I'm not celiac, I don't have celiac, or I don't need to be cutting out gluten. But from a taste standpoint, like you can't really tell the difference with a lot of things. And if they taste good. So it's come a long way. So that's kind of how I feel the NA space is going to develop. I think it's still so new. A lot of people are a little weary of it. The products are probably just going to keep getting better and better. Even just the science and how things are created and how alcohol is removed, like those processes might also develop and come a lot further down, years and years from now. So that was my little tangent on how I think of it in my head. But yeah, I think what I would what I wish people kind of knew about the area is that the taste is different. It's going to be different. It's not going to be apples to apples. And I think every brand in the space right now has their own kind of flair on taste and flavor, which I think is really, really cool and really fun. My wine isn't going to taste like Shirley or like one of the other brands, like we all have different formulas. We all have our wines coming from different parts of the world. So I think that's something that people just will understand over time as it becomes a little bit more mainstream. And then the other thing is that there is the price component is tough for consumers. It's like, okay, why is this non-alcoholic wine going to cost more than the real McCoy? Like that, how does that make sense? There's no alcohol in it. But what is a little bit, I think, hard for people to understand is that while yes, there is no alcohol, like we're actually paying an additional fee to have the alcohol removed, and we're purchasing the wine with the alcohol. So there isn't a cost savings for the brand and the company. So there's actually added costs. So unfortunately, we have to like relay that on to the consumer. I think that's like another just learning curve that's going to take some time. It's like, okay, this is more expensive, and and people just have to decide, am I okay with that or am I not? So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I know that is a question that does come up a lot. It's just why certain things cost so much. And
Right.
I love your example of the gluten-free products, because that's another category where people are like, but why does it cost more? I think like all the formulation and the testing and the supplies, like it's different than just like straight up like wheat. They have to be a little more creative, and some of those ingredients cost more. So I think that's a really wonderful example that actually I never thought of it that way, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Now, I always ask my entrepreneurs who come on this podcast, because, it's definitely a labor of love, and it demands a lot of love and time and energy. So for you, in terms of just like keeping it together, like as you're building this business, what have been some of your self-care non-negotiables?
I love this question. So I'm sort of what I would consider myself a wellness junkie. So I just love anything that has to do with wellness. And I love taking care of myself from all aspects, mental, physical, emotional, you name it. So I love this question. But I would say for non-negotiables, I have to move my body every day. So even if it's a short walk, taking the dog for a walk, I love to do Pilates. So every day, like just moving my body a little bit, even if I don't need to break a sweat, just moving my body. Like I don't have to tell you, there's so many benefits to moving your body, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. So that's one of my non-negotiables for sure. And then I would say the other one is just like listening to my body. I think that's something that I've gotten better with as I've gotten older. I'm still, I still have a ways to go in order to be like fully in tune with my body, but I've gotten really a lot better at it. And it's just, and what I mean by that is like eating when I'm hungry, not eating when I'm bored. And if I'm tired, like being okay with taking a rest day, or maybe staying in bed a little bit longer, or doing a little bit of a shorter workout, or even taking, not working out. So I just think that there's all these different aspects that, at least for me, I feel like there's been this, I put this pressure on myself, right? Of like, you have to eat super healthy, and you have to spend all these hours working out, and, yada, yada, yada to be healthy. But really what I've discovered is that it's just about being in tune with yourself and paying attention to what your body is telling you that it needs. And that's something that has become really, really just beneficial for my well-being.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I feel like a lot of people listening could relate, because there can be a lot of pressure, whether it's pressure we feel from outside or whether it's pressure we put on ourselves to like be perfect about wellness. But I so often find that, for a lot of people, it really does come down to figuring out like, what are the basic things I need to feel like a full human, and to feel present in my body, and to feel good and like I'm thriving. And so I love what you shared. That's so meaningful.
Yeah.
So I have loved this conversation.
Me too.
I have one more big question for you. But before I do so, what if people want to check out Allay, buy some of the product, connect with them on social, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, so you can find us on drinkallay.com as our website, and you can buy all of our products on there. We're also on Amazon as of recent, so you can purchase the wine there. And then, so our Instagram handle and all social is at drinkallay, Allay. And then we are in, I think it's 10 now, little local bottle shops around the country. So we're growing every day and we're trying to get in as many as we can. But certain cities, Boston, Atlanta, Baltimore, Seattle, we're in some non-alc bottle shops there, which is really exciting.
Very cool. That is wonderful. And we'll be sure to link to all the socials and when we do the show notes. So that is awesome. So, okay, Shirley, the last question I have for you, I ask everybody this question just because I love that there are so many ways to interpret that. And that question is, this podcast is called Drama-Free Healthy Living. What does healthy living mean to you?
Great question. I would say to me, it means being my best self, which maybe sounds very cliche, but I guess to me, being my best self means like being in balance across all aspects of my life. My health, my relationships, my passion and my passion projects, hobbies, just making sure I feel as fulfilled in all of those different buckets as much as I can. That I think that's to me is healthy living. And it's so much more than just, we just were kind of talking about diet and exercise. Healthy living is every aspect of your life, in my opinion. So I think just being in balance, like we all learned in middle school science class, homeostasis, across all different aspects of your life is what being healthy means to me.
Dang. And thank you so much for being a guest on the show today.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And all you guys who are out there listening, if you like what you hear, please share, post a screenshot talking about this episode. Check out Allay. As always, guys, have a wonderful day and we'll talk soon. Thank you for listening to Drama-Free Healthy Living with Jess Cording. We'll see you next time.